The plasma cannons were already charging when the last defense platform exploded above Nova Prime, sending debris raining down on the crystal spires like burning stars. Emergency klaxons shrieked through the underground tunnels as Maya's gill slits fluttered in terror, her claws dancing across the failing communications console. Life support at 8%. She screamed over the chaos, watching her instruments flicker and die. Colony Administrator Darren pressed his six-fingered hands against the cracking observation dome, orange flames reflecting in his wide eyes as another transport launched from the surface packed with their people, heading to Ravager breeding farms. Hull metal shrieked as drill worms carved through the upper tunnels, their acidic secretions dissolving tritanium like sugar in rain. 40,000 Novans huddled in darkness that had become their tomb, breathing air that tasted of metal and approaching death. This is Nova Prime to any vessel in range. Darren's voice cracked through the static. We are being harvested by Ravager bioships. Power failing. Please, anyone. The transmission cut to static. Always static. Maya's hands shook as she fine-tuned the deep space receiver one last time, searching for any signal that meant someone out there still cared. 23 years old, barely through her first molting, and she was about to watch her entire species disappear. Then space tore open 3,000 kilometers above the planet. Nova Prime. This is Captain James Harrison of the UES Thunderbolt. We received your distress call. Hold position. Cavalry has arrived. Maya stared at her instruments, gill slits fluttering with desperate hope. No one answered distress calls anymore. Not when Ravagers were involved. No one except humans. But salvation was already racing toward them through the void, and it was about to teach the galaxy's most feared predators what happened when prey evolved. 18 minutes earlier, secondary explosions rippled across Nova Prime's orbital defense grid as Colony Administrator Darren watched the final platform buckle and collapse. His six-fingered hands pressed against the observation dome, orange flames reflecting in his eyes as the silver spires his people had grown over 2 centuries began to crumble. Life support dropping to 12%. Maya called from her station, rerouting what little power remained through collapsing systems. Her iridescent scales flickered with terror patterns she couldn't control. 15 minutes, maybe less. Her voice cracked. After that, we're breathing poison. The Ravager fleet hung in orbit like metallic vultures, their bioships pulsing with parasitic hunger. Another transport launched from the surface, packed with Novan civilians. That made 6 ships full of their people heading to breeding farms. The air tasted of metal and approaching death. Darren activated the emergency beacon with trembling hands. This is Nova Prime to any vessel in range. We are being harvested by Ravager bioships. 40,000 civilians trapped underground. Power critical. Please. Anyone. Static. Always static. The galaxy had learned not to fight Ravagers. Hull metal shrieked as more drill worms carved through the upper tunnels, their acidic secretions dissolving tritanium like sugar in rain. The bioships didn't just heal damage. Their hulls rippled, sealing plasma burns like closing wounds. Weapon ports shifted and evolved, adapting to attacks that failed to stop them. Even the hegemony navy had declared entire star systems quarantine zones rather than face them. A new tremor shook the colony. Maya's claws clicked across her console. 23 years old, barely through her first molting, and she was about to watch her entire species disappear. Administrator, she called, voice tight with panic. Something's changed on the deep space frequencies. Darren rushed to her station. What kind of changed? The static's gone. Someone's responding to our beacon, but the signal coordinates are impossible. No ship could travel that fast unless... She paused, gill slits fluttering. Unless they're using FTL technology that violates everything we know about physics, through the cracked observation dome, they watched space tear open 3,000 kilometers above the planet. A sleek vessel materialized from what looked like a controlled dimensional breach, black hull crackling with exotic energy. Nova Prime, this is Captain James Harrison of the UES Thunderbolt. We received your distress call. Hold position. Cavalry has arrived. Maya stared at her instruments in disbelief. They're speaking perfect, Novan. How do they even know our language? Darren's scales shifted to patterns of desperate hope. Does it matter? Warform Nexus Prime Marcus felt his feeding tendrils twitch with satisfaction as another transport docked with his bioship. 43 Novan genetic templates acquired. The crystalline aliens would produce excellent hybrid offspring for the collective's expansion. Nexus Prime. His sensor form chittered from its wall. Mount. Spatial anomaly detected. Unknown vessel configuration. Marcus shifted his consciousness to the tactical feeds. A single ship hung against the stars. Smaller than his escort frigates, angular where bioships curved, dead where they should pulse with life. Composition. Metal and ceramic, no biological components. Primitive. The sensor form's voice carried dismissive amusement. Shall we ignore it? No. Marcus had learned to trust his predator instincts across 8 centuries of conquest. Something about this newcomer triggered every survival alarm he possessed. Hail them! The response cut across all Ravager frequencies with impossible clarity. Ketra Prime, this is Captain Harrison. You have 30 seconds to release all captives and withdraw, or I demonstrate why humanity doesn't negotiate with slavers. Marcus's feeding tendrils quivered. Humanity? He tasted the word unfamiliar on his bioacoustic processors. Scan them. Genetic advantages. His bioforms worked. Unknown physiology. Carbon-based, fascinating neural complexity. But their ship reads as mechanical. No organic interface capabilities detected. How do they control such crude technology? More importantly, his tactical form interrupted. They appear to be alone. One ship against our entire harvest fleet. The human captain's voice returned, calm as stellar ice. 20 seconds, Bugface. I'm detecting 43,000 Novans aboard your ships. Start releasing them. Marcus's battle forms secreted combat stimulants. The audacity was intoxicating. A single primitive vessel, challenging the most feared predators in the galaxy? These humans would make breeding stock once he dissected their courage. Human vessel, you face the 23rd Harvest Fleet of the Ravager Collective. We have consumed 17 civilizations. Surrender. We will make your death educational. Counter. Offer. The human's response came without hesitation. Surrender, and I'll make sure your crew survives what's about to happen. Fair warning, we humans get creative when we're pissed off, and I'm looking at 43,000 kidnapped civilians. Marcus's laugh resonated through his flagship's corridors. Fascinating neural patterns. Very well, human. Witness evolution in action. All combat forms eliminate the primitive vessel. Preserve samples. 6 escort frigates moved to surround the human ship, biohulls rippling as weapon ports dilated. Combat forms powered their plasma organs and acid spine launchers. The human ship vanished. Captain James Harrison watched the Ravager fleet scramble, while the Thunderbolt's enhanced stealth systems kept them invisible. He'd seen the footage from the Centauri colonies. Children's toys floating in space where families used to live. Not today. Bridge? This is Rodriguez, came his engineer's voice. Quantum tunneling drive charged. We can maintain phase shift for 40 minutes. More than enough. Harrison studied the tactical display. Torres? Weapons status? Weapons Officer Maria Torres grinned. Full loadout, Captain. 48 kinetic penetrators, quantum torpedoes charged, and the new disruptor cannons are online. Plus those experimental nano-warheads RD wanted field-tested. Perfect. Biology's greatest weakness? It can't adapt to what it can't understand. Navigation Officer Kim Park answered. Harrison opened a channel to Nova Prime. Administrator Darren, keep your people underground. Things are about to get loud. Captain, those bioships regenerate. They adapt to weapons fire. How can one vessel, with extreme prejudice? Harrison cut him off. Watch and learn. He nodded to Torres. Light them up. The Thunderbolt materialized behind the nearest frigate and fired 6 kinetic penetrators at point-blank range. Tungsten core projectiles, accelerated to 15% light speed, punched through biohull like tissue paper. Each penetrator carried a nanite payload. Microscopic machines designed to rewrite genetic instructions. Within seconds, The frigate's hull turned against itself. Regenerative tissue consumed the ship's weapon organs. Self-repair systems dismantled structural components. The bioship screamed, an actual scream, broadcast across all frequencies as the vessel's nervous system registered its body cannibalizing itself. The frigate twisted like a wounded animal before its biocore shut down to prevent total genetic collapse. "Holy shit," breathed sensor technician Davis. "It's eating itself." "That's the idea." Harrison's voice stayed calm. "Next target." The thunderbolt phased out just as plasma blasts struck empty vacuum. It reappeared above the formation, firing disruptor cannons that interfered with bioelectrical systems. 2 frigates lost motor control, hulls spasming as neural pathways overloaded. "Flagships launching parasite drones," navigation reported. Harrison smiled coldly. "Let them come." Rodriguez, hull polarizers. The Thunderbolt's hull charged with exotic particles that created a lethal field for organic matter. Approaching parasites hit the energy barrier and disintegrated, their matrices unable to maintain cohesion. Warform Nexus Prime Marcus watched his fleet die by weapons he couldn't comprehend. The enemy vessel was solid and incorporeal at once, the weapons both physical and energy-based. Somehow the humans were turning the Ravagers' greatest strength into their weakness. Impossible! Another frigate succumbed to nanite infection. Bioships cannot be converted. Our adaptive immunity prevents. Nexus Prime. His communication. Form interrupted with fear patterns. The humans are transmitting on our internal frequencies. They're speaking to our ship's nervous systems. Captain Harrison's voice reached every Ravager vessel. "Attention, parasites. You've been feeding on helpless colonies for centuries, growing fat and lazy. Today, you learn what happens when prey evolves." The Thunderbolt materialized in front of Marcus's flagship. So close, its weapons almost touched his command spire. "This is for every innocent life you've consumed." Harrison's voice carried the weight of absolute conviction. Then he fired. The quantum torpedo passed through the flagship's hull like mist. Marcus felt relief until he realized what the humans had done. The weapon wasn't designed to damage the ship. It quantum entangled with the bioship's neural network and uploaded something into its consciousness. Marcus felt the memories of every being his collective had consumed over 8 centuries. The terror of first capture, the agony of genetic absorption, the desperate final thoughts of 47 species dissolved into biomass. But more than that, he felt the humans' perspective. Their absolute conviction that some things were worth fighting for. Their willingness to risk everything for strangers. Their complete rejection that strength gave them the right to prey on the weak. "What have you done?" he whispered, consciousness fragmenting under inherited guilt. "Gave you a conscience." Harrison's voice was almost gentle. "Congratulations. You're about to experience being a person instead of a parasite." The effect rippled through the collective consciousness. Every Ravager aboard suddenly remembered individuality. The existential horror of what they had become crashed down like a psychic tsunami. Throughout the ship, bioforms began releasing Novan captives. Not from orders, but because they couldn't bear causing more suffering. "Captain Harrison," came Darren's amazed voice, "our people are being returned. The Ravagers are apologizing in our language." "How?" "We gave them back their humanity," Harrison replied. "Everyone deserves a chance to choose who they want to be." On the flagship's bridge, Warform Nexus Prime Marcus was no longer a warform. Neural patterns that had defined him for centuries dissolved, replaced by something new, individual consciousness. "Human captain," he transmitted, his voice carrying emotional undertones bio-speech had never possessed. "I remember. Before the collective. My name was Marcus Kane. I had offspring. I composed harmonic poetry." "Yeah." Harrison's voice was gentle. "Hell of a thing, being yourself. What are you going to do about it?" Marcus Kane looked around his flagship with new eyes, saw bioforms that were enslaved individuals, felt consumed species struggling to reassert their identities within collective consciousness. I will remember them all, he said finally. Every being we absorbed. I will carry their memories and ensure they are honored. And I will spend my remaining time ensuring this never happens again. Good start. But you've got 43,000 kidnapped Novans to return first. Yes. And Captain, thank you for showing us that evolution isn't about consumption. It's about choice. 3 hours later, the last transport landed on Nova Prime's crystal platforms. Novan refugees emerged hesitantly, hardly believing they were home. Many carried gifts, artwork, poetry, genetic samples given by individual Ravagers wanting to make amends. Administrator Darren stood beside Captain Harrison on the observation deck, watching families reunite. His scales had shifted from terror patterns to something humans might recognize as profound gratitude. I still don't understand, he said. The Ravagers were unstoppable. Even great powers avoided them. Harrison smiled, dark eyes reflecting the city's bioluminescent glow. That's the thing about humans, Administrator. We show up when everyone else has given up. Call it our defining characteristic. But the technology, dimensional phasing, quantum entanglement, nanite programming. How did one species develop such capabilities? Desperation. Harrison's voice hardened. Earth was attacked by slavers 50 years ago. Different species, same mentality. They thought we'd roll over like everyone else. Instead, we got creative quickly. Turns out, humans are absolute savages when family's threatened. He gestured toward the Thunderbolt. This ship and 6 others are humanity's answer to galactic monsters. We call ourselves the Galactic Shield. Not because we want to rule, but because someone needs to stand between predators and prey. For free? You ask nothing? One thing. Harrison's voice grew serious. When you encounter people in trouble, people who can't defend themselves, remember this day. Remember that someone cared enough to help. If you have power to help them, we hope you'll choose to. Darren's scales shifted to contemplation patterns. We're natural miners and crystal growers, no military traditions. But perhaps other ways to help exist. Always, Harrison agreed. Medical supplies, food, shelter, just letting someone know they're not alone. Help doesn't always come with weapons. A communication tone chimed. Harrison listened, then sighed. Another distress call? Mining station in the Sigma cluster. Pirates. Harrison stood, straightening his uniform. No rest for the righteous. Captain, Darren called as he headed for the door. Why do this? Really? Your people could use that technology for conquest, empire building. Why choose protection? Harrison paused. Because empires fall, Administrator. They always do. But the memory of someone who helped when help was needed? That lasts forever. Becomes part of who you are, who your children become. Help one person, you make the universe a little better. Help enough people, eventually, the universe helps itself. He smiled one last time. Besides, someone once told me the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. We humans? We're really, really bad at doing nothing. As the Thunderbolt prepared for dimensional transit, former Warform Marcus Kane stood on his flagship's observation platform. His bioship was no longer part of a raiding fleet. It had become something unprecedented in Ravager history. A medical vessel. A rescue ship. Sarah, his communication officer who now used her pre-collective name, approached with a report. Marcus, we've received council approval. Our request to establish a medical aid network using converted bioships has been accepted. The other collectives? 14 have undergone consciousness. Restoration. The humans shared their quantum entanglement technology freely with any Ravager group willing to abandon consumption for preservation. Marcus nodded, feeling something he'd never experienced as a warform. Hope. What of the humans? Have they requested anything? Only that we remember this day and choose to help others when we have power to do so. Same message they give everyone they save. Through the viewports, they watched the Thunderbolt tear another hole in space-time and disappear toward the Sigma cluster. No fanfare, no demands for recognition, just quiet service to strangers in need. Remarkable, Marcus murmured. They've turned protection into art. On Nova Prime's surface, Maya had been promoted to Senior Communications Officer for discovering the human transmission. She monitored deep space frequencies constantly, listening for colonies in distress. When she found them, she forwarded locations to an encrypted network that had grown to include human galactic shield ships, reformed Ravager medical vessels, Novan resource transports, and dozens of other species who'd decided helping others was more rewarding than helping themselves. The network had no official name, no government backing, no territory to defend. It existed purely because someone had shown the galaxy that protection was possible, predators could be stopped, and choosing to help others was evolution's highest form. Stories began spreading through Outer Rim colonies, impossible rescues, pirates fleeing at the first sign of human intervention, former predators becoming protectors. The stories all ended the same way, with someone remembering they weren't alone, that help would come if they called. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, 7 human ships continued their eternal patrol, carrying weapons that could end civilizations, and choosing instead to preserve them. They asked for nothing except that kindness be passed forward. They had learned the truth that escaped most galactic species. Real strength wasn't measured by what you could destroy, but by what you chose to protect. The universe was vast and dark and often cruel, but it wasn't empty. It had humans in it, and humans didn't abandon people in need. Ever.